Welcome back, everybody, to Lit versus Genre. I am Steve,
And I am Jeff.
and now we are going to cross this wild river and see what happens. Maybe some sneaky Aes Sedai stuff will happen,
Maybe, maybe.
perhaps. All right. Uh, let's see. Anything that kind of so they just kind of mosey on over to the ferry where the I don't know the landing is or whatever. Um,
Well, we
any
get that other answer to a question, and this one to me was way more mysterious than in the previous chapter. So this is 4 paragraphs in where Moiraine says, "You must handle it." About he will
right?
remember too much as it is and no help for it. If I stand out in his thoughts, dot, dot, dot. So in the previous one, I think we can, when she's saying, I can't do it, I can't kill it, especially not from horseback, seems like probably talking about the Jakar. But here, it's just like, who's the he, right? Is the he the Hightower person? So probably Hightower. But what is it that Lan's going to do about that situation? Like, does she have memory tricks? So I think this one presents a compelling mystery as to where it's possibly going to go.
Oh yeah, I have it highlighted. I'm a ding dong. Yeah, I was totally like I don't really know what she's talking about. I think it's High Tower,
Right.
and she just doesn't. She'll jump out too much. That also like you know reads to me because they're obviously very concerned about the Trollocs crossing this river as well, right? Um, and which kind of leads to what happens a little bit later after they cross. But I had some confusion about that. Of course I did, because I have confusion about everything. Um, so, oh yeah, I want to talk about what Tom does here, but we'll double back to that. There was something where Lan is talking to Rand, and he's like, "You don't have to worry about him helping the bad guys over the river. Can you
Mm-hmm.
really see him ferrying Trollocs over, especially in this fog, no matter how much gold was offered, or him even talking to a Mydraw? No, we're safe for a time at least." And I'm like, well, that sort of seems to work against what Moraine does later after they do cross. So like,
Mm.
what is Lan saying here? Why would Lan say like, oh yeah, we don't it's cool, kid. We don't have to worry because of course, like Rand is like, why do we have to show him our weapons? And he's like, well, people are messed up when they think nobody can see what they're doing. And like, I liked all that, but then I was like, why does he give all these excuses that we don't have to worry about them crossing when clearly later on it seems like they're very concerned about this guy giving other people a ride back over on the boat. So does that make sense to you, or am I misreading something here?
No, I hear what you're saying. I was just reading the part again right before that. About, he might tell the Fade we crossed the ferry, maybe we'll bring the Trollocs over. So I think the idea that is happening is we could go a couple different directions with this. One is that maybe Lan and Moraine are not a well-oiled machine about everything, right?
Uh-huh.
Because we did see some of that previously where Moraine is like, it's part of the pattern about like letting people come, and Lan's like, you crazy. No, what are you talking about? We
Yeah.
can't do that. So one, we have seen them conflict before, so they might have differing opinions about this. But two, here to me, it seems like Lan is more just sort of easing Rand's mind about things. But that doesn't mean that the Trollocs couldn't use the ferry like on their own or something. So even though this dude probably wouldn't speak to a Myrdal about what happened or take the Trollocs across themselves, maybe the Trollocs figure out a way on their own to take it across. To me, the part that doesn't quite end up paying off, at least not in this chapter, is the mystery that I was talking about earlier,
Right.
where she's like, man, you got to take care of it because, and we are jumping, of course, we're assuming people have read, this chapter to completion. There doesn't really seem to be a moment that Lan take care of it, unless it's referring to when Lan pays them. right? And
Right.
so I'm thinking that maybe it's like when Lan pays them to distract, I think it's just the phrasing is weird, like you must handle it. So you must handle paying them while I am working my magic and, making this whirlpool, right?
Hmm.
Um, but then it's like he will remember too much as it is. So it must be referring to he'll remember that there was a whirlpool already, and that's a huge deal. And then if I stand on his thoughts, so probably more what she's saying is she doesn't want him to do it. So actually, now that I've broken it down, I take it back. It does actually all pan out. But it would mean for this part that we're talking about, Lan already knows that Moiraine is going to be using the whirlpool to destroy it because it's his role to distract them while she does that so they don't realize she's Aes Sedai. So I think that supports the idea that he's just telling Rand, we don't need to worry about these people, but the fairy, that's a whole separate subject that we don't want to leave that for other people to use, basically.
Right. So Land's just kind of bullshitting him here because Land knows in the back of my mind we're gonna destroy this whole thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
Right.
just telling him something to tell him. But I
Right.
don't know. But this is like a private conversation. They're even very pointedly speaking low so nobody hears them. And also, like, so she's worried about them seeing her. When we get to that scene where I guess we're just gonna go all out of order in this chapter. I just feel like we're going, and that's fine. We can do that. We're allowed. It's our podcast.
We can be
But
crazy.
so so where is she? Where is she standing here when he's paying them? It's loose. Hightower screams. So there he's land handing the last of the coins. With a loud creak, the landing shivered.
Yeah, she's
Where?
standing looking at the river. So, I mean, we don't know exactly how much space is in between them, but their attention's definitely on land and getting their money.
And she even directly answers Hightower. Here now, where's my gold? It shall be paid. Moraine's voice came from somewhere in the mist. Okay, so she is kind of hidden, so he can't
Mhm.
see her. Um, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. But then
Well,
Lance like,
well,
yeah,
later we
we
do see. I was going to say the Aes Sedai stood looking at the river, though what she could see was beyond Rand. But yeah, it does mean that maybe the other people can't see her, right? Or then she does come out. I think it's mainly that she doesn't want Hightower and his men looking at her while she's making the whirlpool, right? She has to appear like just as, whatever. But it's not like they're great actors about it, which is just like an
right.
unfortunate occurrence, right?
Yeah, we
It's like
did
she's like, oh
this.
my goodness, we could have died, right? So it is interesting the way that she's like she wants to be safe, but she is also not willing to break character in order to.
Yeah. Well, this might again like be Jordan like wanting to tell us something more than what the character would say because it does kind of come across as like Land's rubbing it in right here where he's like it seems like you'll be carrying no one else across the river and like dude if you're not trying to give away that you don't want to be followed you're kind of giving away really badly that you don't want to be followed right here but it
I
does
think
you're right it does have her hidden here I didn't even so her voice was hollow in the fog that made her a shadow so yeah
yeah,
I guess they never do get to see her although she
yeah,
had
it seems like Rand can see her at some points, but then others not. So it feels like those descriptions are around when we're talking about Hightower to emphasize that they kind of can't, you know what I mean? Which is an interesting trick, I suppose, that Rand gets to see her. But then when we're talking about the other people, it talks about her being hidden. But I think it's to emphasize the exact point we're talking about. I think what's interesting about this language is it does make it feel I don't stylize isn't quite the right word, but it makes it feel like another world to me. Like, oh, this is how these people talk. You know what I mean? Like an unfortunate occurrence. It seems you'll be carrying no one else, right? Like, obviously that's not the way we would do it. If some con artists these days, they'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. That was so terrible for you. But this is like they're paying it back and everything, right? To try to like make them happy. So they give them all this gold because of it. But I don't know, like for some reason, like I make fun of it in some ways by saying that they're not being good actors here, but in other ways it really grounds me in like who they are as people and that they stretch to a certain extent to get done what needs to be done, but they also are these sort of like proper or, kind of spoken individuals. And so it fits and works for me too. I don't know. It's a strange juxtaposition that I experienced in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your argument there. Just when I read that sentence, I was like, "Damn, you cold, bro." And it's something maybe about
I
like,
kind of love reading it that way too, though, because I hear you. Because it's like, ooh, ooh. Yeah, that's
well, the flat tone too also makes me
right.
think like it's one of those things where he's saying it, but he's letting him know, like he's not being sounding sincere here in this moment. He's saying like flatly.
Right.
And that just makes it sound like gangster style, right?
It totally sounds. Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about this in last week's podcast, but here Rand's not 100% sold that Moiraine did this. He's like, and I'm like, I feel like everybody knows that Moiraine did this. I feel like even Hightower knows right here at this point that Moiraine did this, but
Yeah, it
somehow
is.
Rand's like, maybe not.
Yeah, I think from looking at these scenes, we can come to a conclusion, at least in this part, that Jordan is favoring what sort of emotional hits does he want the reader to have? Because I do enjoy this hit where Rand is, thinking again about the moment that this other guy had about the whirlpool. But yeah, if he could figure out the mist, why can't he figure out the whirlpool? That sort of thing. And this one even seems potentially more obvious. So yeah, I think Jordan's saying, you know what, I'm not going to stress the consistency aspect for this. I'm instead going to focus more on like what's the beat that I want the reader to have.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice. I don't know if I could be so bold as to do that.
The other thing I thought was funny here was when he. So, I'm kind of scared to even presume any of my readings are correct at this point. But when he grabs the money and he runs, and then his haulers chase him, I'm
Mhm.
assuming it's because like they're like, "Hey, we want this money too. You can't take all this money." But like, what is Hightower think? Where's he gonna go? Like, where's he going right now? He can't get back across the river. Like, how? Where is he running to with this
Yeah,
money
I
he just
assume
got?
there's some sort of bridge somewhere. That's
What?
my assumption,
No,
right?
there can't
But
be a bridge. If there's a bridge, the Trollocs just walk
well,
across the
well,
bridge.
no,
Why?
I mean like miles away or something, right?
Okay.
But it is interesting that this happens, right? And then it's like, and other people exit stage left. And that like, oh, your way of getting back home in the middle of the night has been taken away from you. Here's some money. Good luck. And I think that that's meant to. I think that's all meant to be summed up with in the inarticulate cry that Hightower makes as he like flees with the money. So yeah, there's always questions. How are they getting back? How are they crossing? Are they sharing this money? Does Hightower trust these haulers? But I think it's supposed to be all summed up with the scream and then running away.
Well, what's summed up with the scream though? That like he's like, "Oh, I'm screwed."
Yeah,
Like
because it
a
says with a
frightened,
frightened, yeah.
inarticulate cry.
Because is he frightened of seeing a whirlpool? Is he frightened of getting home? Is he frightened of sharing the money? There's definitely a lot of different things he could be frightened about. But
Yeah,
yeah, we don't know which one.
I. This is another one where I'm like, he's assuming I know what the heck he's talking about, and I do not know what the heck he's talking about here. Like in my mind, he'd be mad, he'd pissed off, he'd kind of like slump off. Like okay, I have a lot of you gave me a lot of money to make up for this, but I'm still pissed. And even if it's like, yeah, is he frightened because he knows this is like magic that has just happened? And so he's like, but that would go against Moraine's like, I don't want him to realize who I am idea.
Right.
There's just not enough here. So again, this is not read and find out. This is like, I don't know what is happening right here. And I would like a little bit more or something.
No, I get what you're saying because it does just, and I think it's not going to be a spoiler for me to say this does not get revisited, right? Like
Right.
this is not something we are going to return to and learn more like what happened to this ferryman dude. So what we're talking about is this moment where there's a couple different reasons for why someone's doing something. I do wonder if maybe more information is not given because it would be problematic to do so, right? Like this is an instance where if there is no bridge far away, but there is a bridge somewhere, then we're wondering about like what about the Trollocs crossing that bridge, right? Um, if it is a fear of the whirlpool and the seeming magic, then as you say, that goes against her, Moiraine, not wanting this to be revealed, right? So it's almost like he's letting you choose. It's almost like I've painted into this corner, and now you get to pick like which reason you think it is this individual is running away. Um, it's definitely a strange reaction because I thought for a moment right here that I had an answer because we've got Hightower acting as you even said, that his shoulders hunched, right? And initially be like, oh, he's maybe sad, but it says his shoulders hunched and his eyes darted to the others here he'd carried across. And so in that moment, it's like, oh, is his shoulders hunching almost away from his workers and then stealing the money and running, right? But it says the others he had carried across, which is maybe the other workers or maybe the Edmund Fielders, right? But then it says, made indistinct by the fog, the Edmund Fielders stood silently. So he's staring at them as if they have answers. So it does seem more he's scared by them as a
Right.
group, and that's what he's running away from. So it seems like that is the overall choice that's being made. I thought maybe it would be hunching away from the workers and stealing the money, but it does seem more like he's just scared about them in general being around people when something so crazy happened.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay.
Because
I
we got
I buy
it.
that. But here's the thing I'll say about this. I know this is not important. We don't care about this character. It's not coming up again. But I don't think being clear means having to write a whole long big thing. You know, there's
True.
a way to both be concise and to be clear so your reader is aware of what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been a few times in this book I'm on record of being like, I just think that could have been clearer and it would not have taken away from the mystery of the world or like the read and find out of anything. It's just like, you could just be a little bit more clear on the page at times, and I like it when he is very clear on the page. Those are the parts that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do hear that. We are definitely left to wonder. There is no finding out later, right? So that's not applying in this one. Yeah, no, I get you. It is a weird moment. I do wonder if that creates some mystery in the world, or by making us fill in what we think is true, it it does make us do something different as a reader. And I do wonder if there's value there. Again, it's not, I love clarity. So, I am on your side on this one. But I do, reading something like this and having this moment of, like, he didn't, right? He does not give us an answer. Is that worth it? When is it worth it to not give the reader an answer in this way? It's a curious question for sure. And we'll probably get some responses about it in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the moment that we talked about where Rand is finally all grows up,
Mm-hmm.
and he decides he better stop thinking they knew anything at all of what people were like beyond his own village. Way to
Mm-hmm.
go, Rand. Way to go. I'm proud of you,
It's
buddy.
a good moment. It's an interesting one for him to have, right? Because it's not like he learned that Terran fairy folk weren't sneaky, right? It's not like they did something really nice for him. But but I do also agree that having gotten this far away from his village and seeing these crazy things happen, he could be like, I know nothing. Like, I have no idea what is actually happening. So I don't know. I think it's not where I would expect this moment of awakening to happen in Rand, but it
Right.
also does make sense because it wasn't just about a person. It's just about the general experience he's had. So yeah, I really like it as a being there. As we're both saying, we like seeing this, the awareness that what you've heard may not be the truth and growing about people and everything. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I do like it's not presented as a big like oh, you learned a lesson. Like, I like that it's not
Right.
like some like crucial thing in the plot that like, oh, his character is developed, because I hate that nonsense, you know that. But maybe we'll get more opportunities to talk about my hot takes on character development a little
All
bit
the hot
later.
takes.
Uh,
Yeah, just a nice little poignant aside, which I think really hits nicely
yeah, I liked it like that. So
as
I
well.
want to continue to talk about how I hate Tom. Like, what does Tom do here? Where he pretty much just makes fun of everybody. Like, Lan's like, everybody show him your D&D weapon, and like they all do this so like they don't get jumped or something. And then
Mhm.
Tom comes out and does like this little goofy thing, and then begins trimming his fingernails. So clearly that's like a goofy joke, kind of making fun of everybody else around him, which Moraine and Egg love. They like eat it up. They're like, yeah, that little joke you just did, Tom rules. And maybe this is just Jordan's commentary on men versus women, but I'm like, ugh, Tom, I can't stand you. Why are you doing this?
Is I would not. I am. These are the moments that I live for in these conversations, because it's letting me really experience this text in a completely different way. I would have never read it like that. But I see why you did, and it's because the last thing he does
This
is trim
trim
his
his
fingernails,
nails. Yeah.
right? And then they laugh. But to me, they're laughing about or not laughing, they're delighted by his performance of spinning the knife around. And then I think the nonchalant when he's just sitting there trimming his nails is being like, when you're nonchalantly sharpening your massive sword, or like, you're nonchalantly like picking the hairs off your warhammer from your last kill. Like, you're not actively engaging and threatening someone with your weapon, but you're showing that you know how to use it and are familiar with it in front of someone. So I don't think he's trying to make fun of like Lan or what other people are doing. I think he's actually doing what they asked him to, but just with a flourish, because he's a performer. But I see how you could read it in
I
that
don't
way.
know.
Which is
There's
fascinating.
like no seriousness to it, though. You know, like there's nothing. Yeah, he does it grandly because that's what he does. He does a big
Mhm.
performance out of it, but it seems really light and goofy. I mean, it's a dagger.
Well,
Uh,
it's like something to nothing, right? He like pulls
yeah,
it out of
right. He
wherever.
makes it appear like a magic trick.
Mhm.
He does like really strike me as Joe from Arrested Development in this moment. You know, like he's like the magician, and everybody hates magicians for exactly this reason. That you're like, come on, dude, what are you doing here? We're trying to be serious. We're trying to look like badasses, and you come out here and do your little magicy magic, and
Oh,
and it's
so
lame.
good.
It's deeply
So
lame.
good. Not according to Moiraine and O'Grain.
Yeah,
They're
they
really
love
good.
it. They absolutely love it. I was like, what? Ugh,
Oh, so
I
good.
hate this guy. I hate this dude.
Oh, I'm so glad we talked about this part.
Well, we have another moment in this chapter of him being shady, I believe. So, we will get to that.
Let's
Uh,
do it.
so they sink the dude's boat. Rand doesn't know how he should feel about this. And again, I guess this is here to tell me, yeah, maybe Aes Sedai are bad in some way. But I think also like they're doing backflips to tell me like this is kind of something they had to do, which I
Mhm.
100% agree with. I'm like, yeah, they had to sink the boat. Like they can't leave that there
Right,
and get captured, and they give them all this money. So it just
right.
doesn't seem that bad to me. Um, what they did. Yeah, I guess it's kind of bad, but what are you gonna do? You gotta like do stuff like this
Mhm.
sometimes. So I'm still not like kind of sold on I should actually be scared of Aes Sedai, or that they are going to trick you or mess with you. But they go off into the woods, and turns out Lan has already set up this freaking like okay, let's talk about this place that he set up,
The
because it
Beaver
seems
Dam?
it's like it's like a freaking cabin or something. It's like the nicest, like it's like the nicest outpost in the woods. He just kind of walks off by himself, and then they go, "Oh, I set up these digs for us." I wouldn't be surprised if it's got a hot tub in the back and like it's got like water beds. Like it is like super set up. And so I had to read back over this to be like, what is this place? Because it's described here, it's kind of perfect in that you can have a fire in it. The draft will carry the
Right.
smoke out, but it won't let light out through the top. I couldn't figure out at first if this was just like something he found and and was like, oh, I'll take note of this and we'll stay here later, because it's kind of described as there was like a flooded out area and all the trees had fallen over.
Mhm.
On the other hand, this idea that it's like so perfect that you can build a fire in it, the draft will keep out the smoke, but somehow it won't let light out to give away their position, also makes me think he had to like work on it a little bit, or like kind of take this fallen tree thing and shape it at least somewhat to make it kind of this perfect, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so I think the idea of this is something that he set up when they were on their way to the Two Rivers,
Right.
as like a spot they could stop back at another time, right? Or at least a spot that he scouted and realized could be good for them, with all these trees that have fallen over, creating this like dead wood pile with this space underneath it. But yeah, I think what you're sort of catching or latching onto is that part that does make it seem perfect, that it is that you can have a fire. Because I think here's what in my mind Robert Jordan thought. Okay, I'm in an enclosed space that dudes can't even stand up in, and they're gonna have a fire. If they're gonna have a fire, they're all gonna get smoked out, right? Because
Right.
it's this relatively small space. I mean, it's actually kind of large, but even still, if you got a fire going, it's gonna fill with smoke, right? So he's like, okay, so the smoke needs to get out. But I also have been talking a great deal about how they need to hide and how they've sent the Drakkar going on the side, and they haven't moved that far away from the river. So I got to make sure that whatever they're doing is something that is, not going to let anyone see, right? So how do I do that? I say, well, there is a fire and the smoke can get out. Not, it's interesting he doesn't talk about how this smoke no one will see, but it is night, so that makes sense. But then he's got to basically cover his bases. But by covering his bases, then it seems so perfect, and then it makes you question, how did Lan have the time to make that,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So I think what he's doing is he's dealing with like the bigger problems to make a smaller problem that you may let slide, because you're like, well, Lan and Moiraine are great, so sure, they get
Right,
it.
right. Okay, so Moraine is gonna break down for Egg, all about the true source, the one power,
Oh
and all
yes,
that good stuff. Here's the part that I was saying Tom was being shady again. He pretended all his
right.
interest was engaged in loading his pipe, but the way he leaned toward the women gave him away. So he wants to hear all this stuff as
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
well. I mean, I guess you could have an innocent interpretation of that, but I do not have an
Of
interpretation
course.
of that. So I think he's being shady. Um, so this, I do like this idea. I've been trying to think like, okay, how is the Rand Egg relationship going to be interesting? And I
Right.
think him being jealous is an interesting moment. Like the tables kind
Mm-hmm.
of being turned, or the balance of power being flipped here is fun. So I like that. I like never seen her look so beautiful or so far away.
Right.
I like that
Right.
line, and he has like another line too. Oh, where he hopes she's fails. You have to fail,
Yeah.
and
Isn't
like
that a crazy moment
yeah,
where he's I mean, it's something we would generally not say in life, or like, I hope you fail at
right,
that to
right,
someone you're supposed to love or grew up with. But in this, it has been set up that Aes Sedai are the other or evil, or maybe kind of evil, or weird, or whatever. So it does sort of make sense that he doesn't want her to. But again, it's a terrible thing to say about someone who clearly wants to succeed in it. So yeah, I love this ending part, and I will obviously let you go on, but I feel like this part works so well of one creating that tension between her and Rand both in this moment and then promising of that continuing. And this is the moment that I was saying that I think Jordan does a wonderful job of selling us on Egwene's excitement to be out and to be living an adventure. Like this feels very real to me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she has a ring, right? Like she made that light. So she's excited. She's going to get to be an Aes Sedai. And I was like, boom. That's where we see her excitement. It feels really legit to me.
Yeah. And it is funny when he's like I don't buy like the altruistic interpretation of she has to fail, like he's worried about her. Like this feels more self-serving to me. This feels
Oh,
like
I would agree with that. Yeah.
you will like even though I've been wishy-washy on you, that and this I do kind of like because like, oh, you're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
wishy-washy on the girl until you realize you're not gonna be able to
Mm-hmm.
get with her anymore because she's going to be, way more powerful than you or something like. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait, you can't leave, you can't go and do this.
Right.
And I like that
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I do like also at the end, her immediately turning to him and saying in
Right?
excitement, which is like the
Yeah.
dagger to him. So
Oh,
yeah,
it's
I
so
liked
good.
all that.
Yeah. Love it. Um, I mean, coming off that high, I don't even know if I want to talk about the other things, but I was going to say we did promise that we would mention the part where we see no, I'm sorry, Moraine flexing about what she did on
Oh
horseback.
yeah, yeah.
How there's only like 10 women. But I actually want to ask you something right on that same page. You
Oh
said you looked up Red Hajjah, right?
yeah.
And I thought it was interesting you did because in this part, we do, Moraine says what the Red Hajjah, or no, wait, it's
A
not.
little bit later, he says. So like I looked
Yeah.
it up right away, which again that is the curse of a glossary. Like are you going to look it up right
Ooh,
away or you're going to keep
okay.
reading a little bit
Okay.
more? Which in this case I could have just kept reading a little bit more. But let's talk about this a little bit because I am despite looking at the glossary, I think I am a little bit confused because we have a word here, gentle them. Now that
Mm-hmm.
sounds nice, but it also kind of sounds like one of these things where the word sounds nice,
Right.
but it's actually going to be, straight up murdering you before you can break the world type deal, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of supported by the phrase hunting down
Right.
every man with it. But then he had never really understood what the Ajas did. So again, we're just kind of like playing with not being clear what they do. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, they kill them before they can like mess up the world. But maybe gentling is something different. Maybe it's a way of like just stopping their power or like
I
and
mean, the glossary does have gentling.
damn, I should have looked up gentling. I did not look up gentling.
It's because it wasn't italicized. You were like, I don't know.
It wasn't capitalized. I knew it to be
It wasn't
capitalized.
capitalized or italicized. How could you know?
Okay, well,
Um,
I gotta go look at it now.
oh, you're gonna look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I've got to.
Real time, Eric. Real time.
I'm
Well, it's
learning.
like into the
I'm
glossary.
learning here at the
Well,
moment.
I mean, I wouldn't. That to me is where I would keep reading. I'd be like, that sounds mysterious. Let's find out.
Yeah, so read and find out. What? Okay, the act performance of shutting off a male who can challenge. Okay, so that's kind of what I was thinking. It's not killing
Right.
you, but it's just stopping you, and hence that word gentle
Mhm.
is giving that connotation.
Well picked by Jordan, I think.
Yeah,
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 because like you said, it sounds like it's going to be nice, but you also get the feel that it's not because of hunting down. And yeah, you predicted what it was going to be, which is
yeah, but
cool.
I
I mean,
don't feel any sense of pride from that though, Jeff. I don't feel like really super excited that I did that or anything. I'm glad that it's there in the glossary and that I now know. So is this like why I'm never gonna be like a fantasy reader? Because I can't get like I don't know why I'm excited about that. I'm excited and here's the thing that I'll be like, I want to read and
shoot, yeah,
find out. I want to read and find out what happens with Ran and Egg and if his jealousy drives her
sure,
off and then
sure.
if he feels regretful about that. You know, those are the things, because I have a reason to care about that. I don't really have a reason to care what is the meaning of this word that Jordan made up.
I
Does that
think
make sense?
Oh, completely, completely. And I think there's something we touched on in early, I mean, it might have been the prologue. The prologue was rich with these
Right.
instances, right? And that's why I initially got so excited by us having these conversations because it makes me have to think about why do I love fantasy? Like
Uh-huh.
fantasy is one of the only things I read. Sure, I've read other stuff, but the main one that I like, it's not even close in terms of how much I've read of other things. Even like sci-fi is barely anything compared to fantasy. It's like why, right? And it's interesting because sci-fi does have some of this, but I think some people find a joy in what we're talking about, which is someone has made a world and it's we're going to slowly peel it back and experience it. And that is part of this idea of, I don't know, getting to walk in this world and slowly discover it, to make it like you're a child almost experiencing it. I don't know. It's like it's this act of discovery that we don't often get in our day-to-day lives. For me, like I'm kind of bummed out when I was born that like we've discovered most things, like as the planet Earth, right? In terms of like locations, people have been to most locations that exist, right? Like there's not many places left where I can Indiana Jones it and like go find something that people haven't looked at. I mean, sure, there's a couple out there and so on and so forth, and maybe I would never go anyway. But like, I definitely feel that loss as a person being born now in this age. And I think fantasy helps me like discover this other frontier that's, well, of course, made up, but it feels like another world. So yeah, I think that's part of it. I don't think that means you'll never become a fantasy reader or sci-fi because I think there's plenty of works that don't do that don't lean on what is this word I made up and you'll find out what it is later. I think they're going to have little words here and there, but they're not as consequential. And I think we've seen a lot of fantasy move away from this to be more accessible
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yeah.
I think it'll be big stuff. So I was just gonna say like Hunger Games, right? Like what's the Hunger Games, right? Like we don't know what that is initially. People are hungry. Why is it called hunger? That sort of thing. Like so figuring that out matters because it's what she's gonna have to do and people seem freaked out by it or something, right?
Mm.
But like a little thing like this, yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to bring up. Like the size of the thing, the relative importance of it. Like if it is something bigger, then I'm like, okay, if I know the importance, if I know if I'm
Right.
signposted this is crucial, then that ups my
Mhm.
interest, and I'm like, okay, then I am interested in finding that out. When it's just a cast off word, like gentling them, and then I also get like contradictory signals, then I'm like, why? Not only the hunting down, but Matt and Perrin are like freaked out about this. They suddenly wish they
Well,
were home. Are they just tired? But it can't just be that they're tired because it has to be in relationship to what he's talking about right here,
so
right?
Brett, I think what this is meant to tie to is when we hear about men have the ability to touch Sidene, and at this point we know that drives them crazy, right?
Right.
And so now we're talking about like people that could have power and then destroy things, right? I want to say, I was looking for the line as you were talking about this because there's a moment where Rand thinks about, a couple that he had heard about. Here we go. It's right after this. Rand shipped uncomfortably. Men like those of whom the Aes Sedai spoke about were rare. He'd only heard of three in his whole life and thanked God never in the two rivers. But the damage they did before the Aes Sedai found them was always bad enough for news to carry, like news of wars, earthquakes, destroyed cities. So what we're getting right now is that they're basically talking about like living natural disasters. And so that's why Rand is uncomfortable hearing about it. That's why Matt and Perrin aren't, liking it because of that. And we could think that maybe Tom is growling because he's growling for hatred toward men that can destroy the world, or maybe he's growling about the gentling. So I think this is the clarity thing you're talking about, right? Because you're trying to figure out, are they uncomfortable about the idea of those type of men getting gentling, imagining what it would be like for them to get gentled,
Uh,
or are they uncomfortable just at the conversation of these men that go crazy, that destroy things and then hunt it down, right?
yeah.
And I feel like in this part, it's really hard because you could have different people reacting for different reasons.
Right.
Maybe Rand and his friends are reacting for one reason and Tom is reacting for a different reason, maybe, right? But like we can't know. So I don't know if there's a way to do it that would work for the type of reading you're doing versus the type of reading I'm describing to like a traditional fantasy reader, which is obviously a generalization, not true of everybody. But this one here feels like I don't know of a way to do it differently. Whereas in the others, when we were talking about like the Drakkar crying, like totally get it. Why don't we wait and do that after the fog has covered them or something, right? So this one, yeah, I don't know. It's a sticky one because of the potential alternate meanings.
Yeah, if
But
you're just if your
yeah,
goal is to like be like, oh, I want to create this mystery in the reader's mind that they'll be interested in, they'll want to read on and find out about, you almost need more clarity in those moments, to kind of signpost, well, what mystery should I be interested in? What exactly is the promise of that? Whereas like with Tom, I mean, I would almost want to give something more here about what Tom's interested in, what he's reacting in, why he's kind of so involved. If that does have a menace to it, make that clear. If there's, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be interested in here, and in the things that I'm not being given. Like I would like to know, oh, if Tom is being shady, okay, that is interesting. I already think he is shady, but like, I don't know. I don't have enough of a grasp on that of what I should be expecting. Like, I think I want more given away to keep the hook in me. Like if you're being that coy, then how are you going to keep somebody interested in it if they're not just kind of naturally, oh, I just like anything you hide from me, I want to know what it is. It's like, that's kind of just a weird, just go, oh, I'm just going to hide shit. And people are going to be like, oh, I want to find out. I don't think it really works that way. I think you got to give them like more to be invested in about finding that out.
I mean, I am like I want to know what's going to happen. I mean, because I already like the characters, so I'm okay for there to be these little weird things because that's part of what I'm reading for, is to learn more about the world and find out what those little things are. And that is definitely the style of like this sort of book. I think in this moment though, it's perfectly fine to just be reading it as they're talking about men who can destroy the world. Everyone, all the men react uncomfortably in some way, shape, or form. We've got growls, we've got shifting, and then Rand explains why, because these men are crazy. So I don't think there has to be more read beyond that. That just like, we're talking about men getting gentling. We don't know what that is, but since all the men kind of freak out about talking about men who can destroy the world and them getting gentled, it seems like it's all just bad. Whatever, whether it's the gentling, whether it's the men who can destroy the world, it just seems like bad news bears. And I think you can just read that part in that way and mosey on and not have to be caught up on it. More than that, I think that's the thing. There's differences between like, here is a big mystery that I want to signpost as a writer for the reader versus here's just like some little nugget that maybe you'll appreciate later or maybe you won't, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say signpost those big mysteries, make everything else clear. It would be my way to go. And I'm not 100% sure he realizes, the mixed signals, or that things are not clear all the time. I mean, maybe he's in total control of this, and he's like, I want this effect, but I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced of it. Here, like, if he wants it to make it that they're like, don't like thinking about these men, like that's what Matt and Perrin are thinking, that's what Tom's thinking. I think it would be pretty easy to write that in this paragraph. Pretty easy to make it clear, oh, yeah, that what we're uncomfortable about is that these dudes exist, period, versus what the Red Ajas do, because it's just kind of bouncing back and forth between those. Those are both getting the same weight. The Aja's plot and squabble among themselves. They hunt down every man who ever
Mhm.
dreamed of wielding the one power. We're uncomfortable about that. I I guess it does make more sense that they're uncomfortable not about the hunting down of these people, but about the men who have the power. But the way it's
Mhm.
written, I don't 100% know that, because the last thing you said before you said that sentence was hunting down. So I just don't think it's written in a way that is clear on what Matt and Perrin are thinking, what they're worried about, what Tom's thinking, what he's worried about, when it could be very easy for it to be perfectly clear about that.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of, I mean, I think Jordan didn't want that, right? Because it could be so easy. It could just be a line of like,
And I don't know what
you
that
know,
serves. It's not a mystery. That's not a fascinating mystery. That's just like seems muddy.
yeah, I mean, I think it seems a little more real and not as perfect. Like that if we're watching certain actions, we don't necessarily know why people are reacting the way they are. That's kind of what I was saying before about that in this story, we don't see as much into Rand's head as I feel like you do in more modern fiction, right? Like I think now we would see more like Rand thinking about the exact thing that bothers him, or then Rand hypothesizing what it is that's bothering his friends. They probably didn't like the thought of, or they had been all scared at 10 when they heard about some volcano exploding because of a guy 2 towns over. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel now that extra stuff would be there. So at this stage, I do think it is a stylistic choice that, because these are, I think, relatively clear-cut things that Jordan would be aware of or an editor would be aware of, that they're choosing to leave it this way, um, you know,
Yeah.
for whatever reason they're feeling. But I think it creates it creates a sense of mystery in the story. I realize it's not the same sort of mystery that you're talking about that is more traditional, but it does create a feel for it. And I suppose at some point we should take a look at something more modern and see if that is happening to
Yeah.
the same degree, right? And obviously we don't have to read a whole another huge novel like this, but I do think you are seeing something of kind of the times here.
Interesting. I do like this for which I did not look up in the glossary. But your first touching, I was like, whoa, that's kind of like sexual there. It's sounding of like your change, your first touching. I was like, oh, whoa, okay, okay, one power, calm down, one power.
Well, I think it's what gives it that added. I think that's purposeful to a
Yeah,
degree, like we talked before, that like, we can associate in our minds what is a big deal when someone stops being a virgin, right? And so I think that that's what Jordan's pulling on some here.
yeah, wow. Okay, so now we're going in. We were resisting the racism metaphor, but like the losing your virginity metaphor, we're going all in on.
I mean, I'm just saying, I
I'm
think there's,
there.
well,
I'm
no,
there
I
for it.
actually
I'm there with it.
agree. I agree that there's definitely a sense of the other, right? If we want to call it like races and neighbors, right? But like the idea is that I think, yeah, that Jordan is drawing on, familiar concepts that we can resonate or that are we're aware of
Mm,
to drive the importance of kind of these moments or for things to feel real.
yeah.
I do feel like we should quickly touch on, because we made a big deal of them in the last video. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but just that Moiraine does have that moment where she talks about how awesome she is doing what she did on horseback,
Mm.
which again, it is feasible that someone could say, I can't kill the Drakkar while I'm on horseback, but I can make a mean fog that other people can't, right? So like, it does seem possible, but it does seem odd that the phrasing is exactly the same.
Right.
And then the thing about the gleam in her eyes, those to me just feel like things that I completely would do as a writer, where I would write something in the same way and not even realize I
Mm,
did it,
mm,
because that's how the words fell out of my brain and fell out that way twice. But
right.
I am surprised in both instances in this chapter that they are the same. First time they happened, sure, whatever, right? But the fact that they happen identical in this one, I do agree with you, is odd.
Yeah, yeah. I do love her flexing here, though. I
Oh, I love it.
like.
Oh, I
They're
absolutely
not
like.
10 women. Dang. All right,
Yeah,
Marin.
10.
Okay.
That's how good she is.
We get that you're awesome. We get it. We're on
That just
board.
makes me want to meet the other 10, right? I'm like, who
Yeah.
are they? Tell me.
Well, so one of those other 10, I guess, is gonna be Egg, because we not only does Egg like start learning the power, but it turns out like from the jump, she's like way ahead of everybody else,
Yeah.
like amazing at it. What Moraine was saying here, it kind of jumped back and forth between something I thought you would really like and then something that you wouldn't like, because what's her first sentence like? She's almost like, you don't need any teaching. And I'm like, oh, Jeff's gonna hate this. Jeff's gonna hate that. He's gonna want there to be all the teaching
All of the
happening.
cake. All of it.
But then
Yeah.
God, did I not highlight that? Wait, what?
Mm,
Dang, I guess I didn't.
where
Oh,
is
oh,
the...
you are one of a bare handful for whom there is no need to learn. And I was like, no need to learn. Jeff's gonna hate that. He loves y'all. You might not know this as listeners, but he loves training. He
All
loves
day.
training.
Like,
And this is
ooh,
kind of one of these training scenes or whatever.
oh,
She
yes.
kind
Yeah,
of
I love it.
reverses course though and says that like, okay, if you don't get trained by me though, you'll still have the power, but maybe you won't reach your full potential. And I was like, okay, well now
Mhm.
Jeff's back on board.
Oh, yeah.
And then and then she like talks her up so much because she makes one little spark, and Egg is
Mhm.
disappointed in this, and she's like, oh, it'd take other people months to be able to do what you did. And then she says, perhaps even the Amerlin seat one day. So I was like, okay, well, I am looking this up. And this is like the queen of the Aes Sedai, basically.
Right.
Moraine says that you could be. I'm like, dang, all right. Now, the other thing that confused me about this is like, well, was Moraine really just gonna leave Emansfield without Egg if she knew, because she's like, oh, I could sense that you had this power and you were gonna have the
Mhm.
awakening of it. I was like, I guess it makes sense that she'd be like, my main concern is getting these boys
Right.
out of here. So okay, I sense that you have this power, but I'm just gonna leave you behind anyway. And then when you show up, you're like, okay, come with me. But I just thought this was like really talking her up big time to just be like, not only do you like have this, but like you are going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think this is such, again, I'm going to say the word interesting, but I think it is such an interesting moment because I think as Robert Jordan, because I'm channeling how I feel, I've got this cool name for the leader of the Aes Sedai, right?
Uh,
And you want to be able to give that, I'm saying like I as if I'm Robert Jordan or something, right? So
right.
Robert Jordan's got the cool name for the leader of the Aes Sedai. And we know that it's like common for when someone's first learning and they're down on themselves to be like, no, you're really good. You got this. You could someday, maybe you could be blank, right? Insert the name of some like famous sports star, famous actor, famous singer, president someday, right? Like keep at it. You could be president someday, right? So it feels like that's what, Jordan's doing here, right? Like, hey, I want to tell you that you could go far. You could even be the best of the best. And I've got a name for it. But then because of that, just as you're saying, you're like, well, wait a second. If this person could be like the best of the best, just why would Moraine ever leave her behind? Um, but I think it does work though, just because of the reason you went through is like, even though that's true, the boys do seem like the biggest priority because the Trollocs are after them, so on and so forth. So even if this person has the potential to be great, these boys are more important. So I think it's like a slight tiny risk for people like us that are digging deeply into it to be like, would you really say that right now? Because that makes us question whether Moraine would have been okay with Beaver. And I think it's like right on that edge. Like you get your cool word, you get your like quasi, normal real life moment of you could be a star. And we still kind of buy it because it seems like the more important thing was getting the boys. But I think it's a close call. And that's what I call it
Yeah, I
interesting.
didn't read that all as like, insincere, that sort of insincere encouragement, oh, like you could be president someday. Like that, like I think just the thing of her saying a second before it takes other people months to do this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I read that as like, yeah, she's telling her straight up.
Oh
She's
yeah,
gonna be incredible.
I don't think she's saying no. I think it's just like if you found someone that's a talented singer and you're like, you're great, you could be a star, and you mean it, but it's still like really hard to make happen. It's not like a guarantee or something, which is why like it would be okay to leave Egwene behind. It's not like she's good, she's great, but it's not like she has to be the leader of the Aes Sedai, or she's the only one that could be, or something like
Yeah,
that, right?
but this line does sound like every like bullshit
Right?
parent, you know, saying,
Exactly. That's
"Hey,
what I'm
if you
talking
work
about.
hard and
Yep.
you study hard and you work hard," you're like, "Whatever,
Yep.
mom."
And I think that's what makes it work so well. It's like maybe because she says perhaps, right? Maybe even if you work hard and study hard. So she's like already setting the groundwork of the indoctrination into her schooling, which of course, as you said earlier, is what I live for.
So I guess we're gonna get more of it then. Oy. Well, we'll get to talk about that
Your
when it
excitement
happens.
is palatable. I feel it. I feel
Oh man. Aes Sedai training, pages and pages of it. Bring
it.
it, bring it.
I
Um,
mean, if I was fan fictioning this book, yes, it would just be
just version.
my.
All right,
But
so then we get treated at the end to this map, which I guess like can I piece these maps together to the like earlier map? Does it like all do they then connect to make one even bigger massive map?
well, this is
Collect
a
all the
zoomed in.
maps.
This is a zoomed in
Oh,
portion of the
zoomed in
map.
portion. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I do wonder about some of this stuff because one, it doesn't seem like this is right where we are right now.
Hmm.
And also in my book, there's this divide like that picture of the map is right beside chapter 13. So I do wonder, because it doesn't seem like this is showing us the Taren Ferry or something. It seems like this is going to be where they go. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But this is all about the promises, right? He's promising like, hey, we're on our way. You see Tarvalon up there in that upper right corner? That's where we be headed, you
Destination.
know? Exactly. And so it's like this promise of like, let's move. And so these types of things, like this gentling, it just is like candy to me. So what was your reaction though to the map? Was this like, oh, we're going to be going there, or let me look at the things, or was it just kind of like map? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah, it's just map. I mean, I noticed Lou's joint in Aes Sedai, which you kind of
Mhm.
clued me in on that they were next to each other in an earlier map, but
Yeah.
I didn't like pour over it, and yeah, I don't know where our heroes are in relation to this. I
Right,
guess that
exactly.
is kind of interesting when you said like it's more connected in the book to chapter 13. I mean, obviously in the edition, I just get a page of this and then
Sure.
I get
Yeah.
chapter 13. Um, but yeah, I guess my assumption was that we'd be close to one end of this, maybe down
Mhm.
here. Where is this a
Right.
little moraine here in this thing?
That's the question, right? Is we have a little more
Like we'd
here?
be down here, and then we gotta get our butts up here.
Right.
So
We're in the bottom left. Got to go to the upper right.
yeah,
Yeah, kind
that
of.
would be my like assumption.
This to me is something you would just sort of glance at and be like, I don't see Terran Ferry, or I don't
Mm.
see, what they just crossed. So I guess I'll look back at it after I do more reading, kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like it's like, oh, promise of future, couple seconds, and then you continue on, and then it's like a reference point potentially if you're someone that's using a lot of maps. That's just my take on where it is and its placement.
Yeah. All right, cool. Anything else to say about this chapter, Jeff?
I just love this chapter.
You love
Well,
it.
I love the ending hit. Like this ending hit to me just works so well, and not just because of the promise of training, but like what we were talking about before of this question of what's going to happen with Rand and Egwene's relationship,
Hmm.
and for Egwene to now be like, oh yeah, I'm not just going on an adventure, I'm going to Aes Sedai to stay,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's just like this beautiful promise of more tension to come, especially because being an Aes Sedai is not necessarily an occupation that is well received from Two Rivers folk.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Well, you know what
I'm
I'm
excited.
excited about?
Talk to me.
I got you saying Aes Sedai, so I'm
I said
excited.
I would. I said I would.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. We will be back next week to make some choices, and so we'll see what these choices are all about. All right. That's a good chapter title. This is because I mean, this is what I care about. I care about choices. I care about people having to make choices that they
Right? Isn't that a
don't want
great
to
one?
make. So
Because you think they don't have a choice right now, right? It's like, oh, we're
yeah,
just, to you, it might have even been boring. Like, oh, we're going from there to
right,
Tarvalon.
right.
Right? But with choices, it's like, are they?
Yeah, I don't even know what the choices would be at this point. So yeah, well, I guess we're gonna
Yeah.
find out next week.
We'll see you then, everybody.